Throughout this video series, I'm going to be giving you some tips on things that you can do to help build a healthy business and a healthy life. And if you're starting out in business, particularly if you're starting out with any sort of an online venture, in the early days you'll probably be working from home. And you need to ask yourself a few questions really as to whether it's going to be right for you or not. And of course there are lots of advantages, but there are also a number of disadvantages, and you really need to weigh those up before you make a decision as to whether or not you want to work from home. Let me go through some of the most common ones. Of course, one thing about working from home and working for yourself is there's no boss. There's no boss shouting at you like this guy here. You don't have to answer to any particular individual. You don't have to keep a boss happy. You don't have to conform to the things that they want you to do. On the downside, of course, when you don't have a boss, when you're your own boss, well, you have to make all the decisions. You can't say, well, that's a bit above my pay grade and simply kick it upstairs. You've got to make all the decisions yourself, and you have to stand by them, right or wrong. Another thing is, of course, you can set your own hours. You don't have to be like this guy here who's obviously at work, at his job, but he'd rather be out fishing. And lots of people think when they start their own business, well, I can start my own business, I can work whatever hours suits me, I can work, a couple of hours a week, and I can spend the rest of the time fishing or whatever it is that you enjoy doing. Sadly though, the reality often tends to be a lot like this, because particularly in the early days you're doing everything yourself. Quite often you find that you're working much longer hours than you were in your old job, and quite often you end up like this lady here, working on late into the night, doing things that you didn't do in your old job, because in addition to doing your job you also have to run your business, and that can be very time consuming. And so sometimes you find that you have actually less leisure time when you're your own boss than you do when you work for somebody else. And of course another big incentive is there's no commuting. You can spend more time with your family because you're working from home. Although the reality often turns out to be a lot more like this lady here. You can see she's trying to work away, but you've got the kids fighting in the foreground there. You've got another child that wants attention. You've got the dog barking, and the next door neighbors are having some work done on their roof, so there's lots of hammering and banging going on. And particularly if you live in a suburb, you'll find that lots of things go on, lots of noisy things go on that you didn't know about because you were away at work. So this is perhaps more typical of something that happens when you're working from home. So before you decide to work from home, you need to ask yourself these questions. First and foremost, are you comfortable making decisions? Because you're the person who's going to have to make all the decisions about the business, about what clients you take on, about what you do, about where you work from, all sorts of things. It all comes down to you. You are the sole decision maker if you run your own business and work from home. Secondly, and perhaps most importantly, will your family be supportive? Because if your family is not supportive, you're going to find it very, very difficult to run your own business from home. In fact, I would go so far as to say that if your family isn't supportive, you simply shouldn't do it. You should either stick with your job, or you should find some other workspace that you can work from if your family is not going to be supportive about you working out of the family home. Very importantly, is there somewhere that you can work undisturbed? And just like the lady in that last slide who's got her family around her and it's all very noisy, you need to find somewhere that you can work that is undisturbed, where you're not going to be constantly interrupted by other people, where your train of thought isn't going to be interrupted by noises and other things and people coming and going and that sort of thing. So you need to take that into consideration. And are you self-reliant? Are you able, like we were saying earlier on, are you able to make all the decisions? Are you someone who needs support from other people? Are you someone who is happy with their own company? Are you someone who is a leader, or someone who is self-reliant, someone who is able to get on and do things by themselves? They don't need someone telling them what to do. And finally, in a similar thing, do you enjoy your own company, or do you prefer to be with other people all the time? And this can be a big thing when you first start becoming self-employed, when you first start working from home, especially if you're used to being with lots of other people. Because, well, you're not with a lot of other people, you're by yourself working at your computer. And if you enjoy your own company, if you're self-reliant, if you're self-motivated, then that's not a problem. But if you're used to working in a big open plan office with people around you all the time, and that's what you enjoy, you're going to find working from home on your own very difficult. In fact, you could be a bit like this guy here. Here we can see him working away at home at his drawing board, but he's reminiscing about times when he had his job and he was surrounded by his colleagues and co-workers, and he generally misses the atmosphere and the buzz of being around other people. Now, I'll cover this in a bit more detail in a later video, but this is something that you really do need to take into consideration. So you need to weigh up the options carefully before you decide whether or not working from home is right for you. In this video, I want to talk about developing an entrepreneur's mindset, because the way that entrepreneurs think is often very different from the way that ordinary working people think. And a lot of people say that entrepreneurs have a different attitude, and it's true, but it's not just attitude. You need to have the right attitude. So let's take a look at some of these character traits that many entrepreneurs share. Well, one character trait that many entrepreneurs share is curiosity. They're curious about the world around them. They like to look at things. They like to see how things could be done differently. And they tend to be very curious people. They tend to have a wide range of interests. The next character trait is decisiveness. They're not afraid of making decisions. They'll weigh up the pros and cons, and then they'll go in and they'll make the decision and they'll stand by it, right or wrong. They don't shilly-shally and think, shall I, shan't I, do I, don't I. No, they'll make the decision and then they'll stick by it. Another entrepreneurial trait is fearlessness. Sometimes they have to make a real leap of faith, but once they've decided, they'll do it. Like the title of the book says, they'll feel the fear but do it anyway. And that is another character trait that many entrepreneurs share. Then there's risk-taking. Most entrepreneurs are not afraid to take a risk, and they enjoy the adrenaline buzz of taking a risk. Lots of entrepreneurs play poker for high stakes because that's the thing that they enjoy. That's what makes them want to get up in the morning, is the fact that they can take a risk, that they can take a gamble, and if they've calculated the risk properly, then it'll come off. If they haven't, if it goes wrong, well, they're prepared to take the consequences as well. And that's something that a lot of people who are used to having a steady job with a guaranteed income find very difficult when it comes to becoming a business owner or becoming an entrepreneur. Then they tend to be imperfectionists. They don't wait until everything is absolutely perfect before launching a new business or launching a new product, because they know that once the time is right, then you've got to get it out to the market or somebody else is going to beat you to it. So they don't wait until everything is absolutely perfect. As soon as something is good enough, then they will get it out to the market, and they will then move on to the next product or on to the next business. And finally, they work with ruthless efficiency. There's no room for sentiment in business as far as they're concerned. Their main objective is a healthy bottom line, and if that means that they can get something done cheaper or better somewhere else, then that's what they're going to do. And that is another characteristic that makes entrepreneurs, well, it makes some entrepreneurs rather unpopular, but it does make them very popular with shareholders and people like that. Another entrepreneurial character trait is perseverance. And as it says here from dictionary.com, perseverance is a steady persistence in a course of action, a purpose, a state, and so on, especially in spite of difficulties, obstacles, or discouragement. And this is something else. Entrepreneurs don't give up. They carry on. They carry on until they meet their objective. And that is something else that sets them apart from ordinary working people. And another entrepreneurial trait, and this is why they're so curious, is they know that anything can be made into a business. You can take anything and you can turn it around into a business to make money. And that is something else that sets entrepreneurs apart from ordinary working people. Let me give you a few examples of people who've done this. And the first example here is Mark Zuckerberg. And Mark Zuckerberg started Facebook while he was still a student. In fact, he started Facebook as a way of rating girls. He'd have pictures of different girls and people would be invited to rate them on a scale of 1 to 10. But of course he didn't have very many pictures of girls, or so the story goes anyway. So he hacked into some of the computers at Harvard University in order to get hold of these pictures so that he could have them on his website. And he got into serious trouble because of it, although the charges were later dropped. And he turned it into a full-time business, and now it's worth mega money. And of course you can find Mr. Zuckerberg's website here at facebook.com. Let me show you another example. The second example is Carol Middleton, and she runs a business called Party Pieces, which makes party bags for children. They do other things as well now, but they started out making party bags for children. She's got 3 children, and when they were small she was giving a party and she found it very hard to track down all the party favors and all the other things that you have for kids at kids' parties. And so she started this business at her kitchen table because she thought, if it's difficult for me to find all these things, there must be other parents who give parties for their children who find it hard to track all this stuff down as well. And she started the business offline. It was mail order, and then they went online, and now most of their business comes from their website. And the business made so much money that her husband was able to quit his job and join the business full time. And this is the Middleton's website, partypieces.co.uk, and it's a fairly ordinary shopping cart type of website. Because it's a privately held business, nobody really knows what the turnover is, but it's estimated to be a good 7 figures every year. And I'm sure there are lots of other sites on the internet that turn over a similar amount of money and are run by people that you never hear of because they stay pretty much under the radar. In fact, I'm sure the Middletons would have stayed very much under the radar were it not for the fact that their eldest daughter, Catherine, known as Kate, married Prince William of the United Kingdom. One more example to show you. And our final case study is Sir Richard Branson, who is perhaps one of the world's best known entrepreneurs. And he started his first business while he was still a teenager. In fact, so the story goes, he actually started 2 businesses, one breeding budgerigars and another selling Christmas trees, and they both went out of business. And he started his 3rd business, which was a magazine, while he was still at school, while he was still at high school. And now his Virgin Group has more than 400 different companies worldwide. And they operate in all sorts of different industries, music, airlines, finance, and a whole lot more. And you can see here on the Wikipedia page for the Virgin Group, it lists all the different companies that they've had over the years and all the different subsidiaries here, and so on. And another character trait of most entrepreneurs, something that most entrepreneurs know, is that you have to work smarter, not harder. And they also know that pay is not the result of work. Most people who have a job, they work out how much they should be paid, so much an hour, so much a day, so much a week, and it all adds up to a certain amount every year. Well, entrepreneurs don't look at it that way. They know that pay is not the result of work, that the amount of money that they make is the result of the decisions that they make. And the amount of time that it takes to do that is completely irrelevant. It's what the decision is and how things work out. And this is another thing that is very difficult for most people to grasp, because for a long time, people are told you have to work at a job and you get paid for the result of the time that you put in. And I suppose most people get this from school. It's what you're taught in school. Time is money, and therefore you sell your services and you sell yourself by the hour or by the month or by the year. And so there is this correlation between time and money. But most entrepreneurs don't think that way at all, and that's what sets them apart. Another thing that entrepreneurs know is that you don't try and do everything yourself. Think about it. Richard Branson's got 400 companies employing goodness knows how many people. He couldn't possibly do every single job himself. But of course, when you are someone who works at a job, perhaps it's not a management job, perhaps it's just an ordinary working type job, then you try and do everything yourself because that's what you've been paid to do. So, of course, entrepreneurs know that they have to outsource, and this can either be to other people, or it can be to other companies. And people outsource things all the time. You've outsourced stuff. Every time you put a stamp on a letter and put it in the mail, you're outsourcing the delivery of that letter to the post office for the price of a stamp. So the other thing they try and do is hire employees to work in the business and hire executives to run your business for you. That's something else that's very important when you're an entrepreneur, because you can't do everything, you can't know everything. So you have to hire people who know how to do what you don't. But at the end of the day, being an entrepreneur, the sort of mindset means that they know that it's all down to you. You have to make the decisions, you have to have the vision and the drive. And that is what sets entrepreneurs apart from other people. So ask yourself, have you got what it takes to be an entrepreneur? One of the many problems that you may face if you're working by yourself from home is feeling isolated. And in this video, I'm going to talk you through some steps that you can take to overcome that. Now, you may remember our friend here from the first video. There he is, working away at home all by himself, and he's thinking back to the times when he had a job and he had other people around him and he enjoyed the atmosphere and the support of being around co-workers and colleagues. And now he finds that he's on his own at home and he really feels it. And a lot of people are in that position, particularly when they first start working from home. So what do you do to sort of get over that feeling of being all by yourself and feeling isolated? Well, of course, one thing that you can do is make phone calls. Just having a conversation over the telephone with another human being can really help to connect you with the outside world. So making phone calls to suppliers, making phone calls to customers, making phone calls to clients, it can really help to break the monotony and the isolation. And you can build a virtual team that you can use to bounce ideas off of and interact with. And you can communicate with them via email or via Skype, and you can either have voice conversations with them or conference calls, or you can use Skype chat. And you should join an online forum that's connected with your type of business. Many people who are watching this video will be familiar with the Warrior Forum, for example, for online marketing. But there are other forums or fora, depending on how Latin you want to be, in various industries, and a search in Google will help you find some. And you should also engage in social media, although you should do so sparingly, as that can become a bit of an addiction and a bit of a time waster. But the ones that are best for business are Facebook and LinkedIn. And you should try to get out of the house at least once a day. And I suppose the simplest thing to do is just simply go for a walk, just go for a walk around the block or go down to the park or somewhere that you can meet other people. Now, obviously, if you live in a bad neighborhood or if the weather isn't conducive to going for a walk, it's heavy rain or snow or it's baking hot, then simply get in your car and go up to your local shopping mall and have a walk around. But just somewhere that you can go to be with people and to interact with people. And you can also go down to your local coffee shop. In fact, lots of coffee shops have free Wi-Fi. You can take your laptop down there and you can work there as well, and you can be surrounded by other people. And you should attend events, events that are related to your business. So I'm talking things like trade shows and networking events. And these will help put you in touch with other people in your industry, and it can be beneficial for your business as well as for your mental health and sanity. Of course, if you really can't stand being at home on your own, or if you're surrounded by lots of screaming kids or there's lots of other noises going on, then something that you might want to do is consider renting desk space in an office. And lots of offices will rent out desk space if they have extra capacity. And you can take your laptop down and you can work there surrounded by other people, and quite often they have other things like photocopying services and that sort of thing as well. And you can rent desk space by the day, by the week, or by the month. And of course, don't neglect your social life outside of work either. This is very important. So join a sports or a health club, healthy body, healthy mind. Join your local chamber of commerce, and that will help keep you in touch with what's going on in your town or city and help you join forces with other businesses. And you should always keep in touch with family and friends. And this is something else that happens when you work from home by yourself. You can become so focused that you rather lose touch with family and friends. So you want to make the effort to stay in touch with them. And you should also meet up with old colleagues or co-workers for lunch or a drink every so often. And when you do, you'll find that they'll want to talk shop and they'll want to moan about the job. And when they do, you'll be reminded why you're so much better off working from home by yourself. Now, one thing about working by yourself at a computer, it can be difficult for your physical health as well as your mental health. But there are some software programs that can help you, and I'll talk about those in the next video. In this video, I want to talk you through some software programs that you can get to avoid RSI and other health-related issues. Now, repetitive strain injury, or RSI, is defined as an injury to the musculoskeletal and nervous systems that may be caused by repetitive tasks, forceful exertions, vibrations, mechanical compressions, or sustained or awkward positions. RSIs are also known as cumulative trauma disorders, repetitive stress injuries, repetitive motion injuries or disorders, musculoskeletal disorders, and occupational or sports overuse syndromes. And if you've ever suffered from it, you'll know that it can be an incredibly debilitating thing. I suffered from it quite badly at one point. I was doing lots of mouse clicks and it made my hand hurt. Every time I clicked the mouse button, there was a shooting pain in my hand. I went to see my doctor. He said, "Oh, you've got RSI. Try using your other hand to click the mouse with." Well, if you're right-handed, you'll know it's very difficult to do things with your left hand and vice versa. and a client told me about some software which I installed on my computer, and it helped me a great deal. And I've subsequently discovered that there are other programs available as well as the one that I use. There are a number of different programs that you can choose from. The first one I want to show you is Workpace, which you can access here at workpace.com, and then just click here where it says Workpace and you can read all about it, and it gives you a whole lot of information here. And this is actually the software that I have on my own computer. Let me just show you. This is the older version which I have on my computer, and you can see it's keeping track of things like keystrokes and mouse clicks, but I can also go through and look at things like computer usage and typing speed and so on, and get a lot of statistics about how my computer is being used. The other things you can do, if I just bring up the status panel here, is it tells me when my next micro pause is due, when my next Workpace break is due, and it tells me how many hours of computer usage I've got left. It tells me things like what my break compliance is, what my work intensity is, and so on. And it's very useful, and I've found that since I started using it, I haven't had sort of aches and pains in my hand like I was getting. It's not cheap, but it is certainly worth the investment. Let me just close that and show you the next one, which is this one here, PC Work Break. And you can access it from this site here, trionsoft.com/PC-work-break. And I haven't personally used this software, I must say, but it is a cheaper version of Workpace effectively. And what both of these programs do is they make it so that when you're typing away and it's time to have a pause or to have a break, it actually locks the keyboard up, so you have to stop working, and you can program in times for when you want to start work, when you want to finish work, for when you want to take your lunch and that sort of thing. And it does actually force you to take the break. It can be a bit annoying to start off with, but once you've got used to using it, you'll find that it's very easy to work with. The final one is Office Physio, which you can find here at officephysio.com. And this is basically exercises that you can do at your workplace, at your desk, to help you avoid things like back trouble and stresses and strains and that sort of thing. So there you go. It's a few things that you can use to help keep a healthy business and a healthy life. One of the skills that you need to develop to help build a healthy business and a healthy life is to learn how to say no without feeling guilty. And I'm going to give you some tips to do that in this video. You know, it's very easy to say yes to everything. A client might say, "Can I have this done by tomorrow?" Yes. Or a customer might say, "I can't afford this. Can I get a discount?" Yes, of course you can. Or one of your kids might knock on your office door and say, "The TV isn't working properly. Could you take a look at it?" Yes, of course. And then you drop everything and go and fix the television, and then your whole schedule goes completely out of whack. And the whole process of saying yes to everybody can be very, very stressful. So why is it so hard to say no? Well, there are lots of reasons, really. People feel guilty when they say no. They feel embarrassed, they don't want to let other people down, and I suppose it's only natural. We don't want to upset people. We don't want people to feel badly of us. There's a fear that people might think that we're not up to the job, oh, he's only saying no because he can't do it. And of course, in business, lots of business owners are afraid customers might take their business elsewhere if we say no. So what you need to do is you need to set boundaries. You need to be able to say, "Yes, I'll do this," and no, I won't do that. And you also have to bear in mind that you can't please everyone. You know, there's that old saying, you can't please all of the people all of the time. And people don't always respect you if you say yes all the time. You know, people might think that you're a pushover. Oh, you know, give it to her, she'll say yes. And also, you can come over as needy or eager to please. And that doesn't, get people to respect you. And sometimes, when you say no, you're actually saying yes. So let's look at some of those examples from earlier on. So, for example, let's look at the client who drops something on you at the very last minute and says, "Can I have this done by tomorrow?" And you say, "Sorry, no." Well, actually, you're saying yes, and you're saying yes to doing a quality job by not rushing. You're saying yes to being true to another client if you're already doing a job for them. So you're not going to drop the job that you're doing for one client to take on this rush job for another client. And you're being true to yourself by not taking on more work than you can handle or by adhering to an unreasonable timetable. Let's look at another example. The customer says, "I can't afford this. Can I get a discount?" And you say, "No." Now, there are often times when you'll have customers who genuinely can't afford something, but most of the time when people are asking for a discount, they're just trying it on. And what you can do is you can say, "No, but I'll offer to spread the payments. We can make it in sort of 3 or 4 smaller payments rather than one larger one." And that way it makes it more affordable. And by saying no, you're actually saying yes to a healthy bottom line, because you're not going to be losing money by cutting the price. You're saying yes to respecting other clients who've paid full price. You're also securing your reputation. People aren't going to think that you're a pushover. And of course, word gets about, ask him for a discount, he'll say yes. That sort of thing happens. And what about this one? One of your kids knocks on your home office door and says, "The TV isn't working properly, could you take a look at it?" And you say, "Not now." Now, obviously, if they said the TV's on fire, can you come and put it out? You're going to say yes. But for most situations like this, you're going to say, "No, not now." And in saying no, you're actually saying yes to setting clear boundaries. If you were working away from home, the kids wouldn't think about calling you up at work and saying, "The TV's not working properly, could you take a look at it now? Could you come back home and fix it?" No, they're going to wait until you get home from work. And that should be the sort of thing that you should set while you're working from home as well. And it's going to get respect for your business activities. This is real work. It's not just sitting at your computer and tinkering about all day. It is a proper job of work. And you're going to be showing that you're not a pushover. I'm not at the kids' beck and call. I'm at work, so work comes first. So there you go. That's just a few ways that you can learn how to say no without feeling guilty. One of the difficulties that many people have is finding ways to stay motivated when working from home. Now, I have heard it said that the way to stay motivated is to just think about how much money you're going to be making. That's the motivation. And conversely, you can think about how you're going to pay the bills if there's no money coming in. Well, let me tell you, that really doesn't work. All it does is get you daydreaming on the one hand and being stressed out on the other. But there are some very simple ways that you can stay motivated when working from home, and I'm going to cover them in this video. Well, first of all, you should get up, and you should get up at a regular time every day. Now, this doesn't mean that you should get up at the same time that you used to get up when you had your 2-hour commute to your office, but you should make the effort to get up at a regular time and stick to a regular routine. And don't try to work from your bed or from your bedroom. When you first start working from home, there's a great temptation to stay in bed till lunchtime and then open up your laptop and look at emails while you're still in bed. But that's not a good idea because you're doing something stressful in an area where you should be relaxing. And the same thing goes for turning a corner of your bedroom into an office. I know, if space is limited, you might have to do that because you might think, well, the bedroom's not used during the day. But you should try and have a dedicated work area that you don't use for any other purpose. And you should get dressed. Don't sit around in your night clothes all day. And you should wear nice clothes. Now, I'm not saying that you should wear a suit and tie if you're a man or a skirt if you're a woman, if that's not the sort of thing that you would normally wear. But you should wear nice clothes. You should make the effort to get dressed for work. And you should make the effort to look presentable. Fix your hair, shave if you're a man, put on makeup if you're a woman, that sort of thing. The sort of thing that you would do if you were going to go outside of your home. Because if you look like a slob, then that's going to come across in your work. And you should have a specific area that you use for work. Like I was saying earlier, this should be for working in and for nothing else. So that when you finish work, you can shut the door and walk away. Another thing that you should do is you should set regular working hours. Now, this doesn't have to be 9 to 5. For example, I'm not a morning person, so I tend to start work fairly late, sort of 10:30, 11 o'clock, and then work on into the evening because that suits me. And that's one of the perks of working from home. But you do have to set regular working hours, time when you're working and time when you're not working. And you should have a working routine, things that you do when you're at work. So, for example, you might want to check emails first thing in the morning or make phone calls first thing and then go on and have certain things that you do throughout the day, just like you did when you had a job. And you also need to set goals or targets. I'll talk about this in another video later on, but you need to sort of have a list of things that you're going to do during the day, a list of tasks that you want to achieve. And you should stop for lunch and you should take breaks. Like I was showing you in that video earlier on, if you've got the WorkPace software on your computer, it'll force you to stop for lunch and it'll force you to take breaks. And that really does work. It does help to keep you motivated. And finally, you should do errands before or after working hours. So if you need to go out to the supermarket, do it before you start work or do it after your working hours are finished, and then keep the working time just for work, just like you would do if you had a job for an employer. And you also want to remove distractions. So don't have the TV on in the background. I know it's difficult if you're interested in sports, for example, and there's something on the television, let's say there's the World Cup or the World Series or a test match going on. It might be tempting to have the TV on in the background so you can check the score, but it is very distracting and it will be very demotivating because you'll be spending too much time watching TV and not enough time working, and then you'll have to make up the time and it gets very stressful. And you should schedule a time for using social media because you can get lost in it. And it's perfectly all right to use social media to help advertise your business, to help to build your business, to make contacts with other people, to make contacts with clients. But it can start to take over your life. So you need to sort of have a block of time when you're going to use social media. And then when you reach the end of that time, you stop and go on to something else. And if you have to surf the net, then only do so when you have something specific to look for and don't get sidetracked onto anything else, because that can be a very big distraction. Something else you want to do is to take regular exercise. You could go for a walk or you can join a gym or a health club, healthy body, healthy mind. And you should interact with other people, and especially if you go for a walk, or if you go to the mall, or if you go to your health club, you're going to see other people and you're going to get talking to them, and that can be very motivational. And it also helps to have a project to fill the slack time when you're not doing anything. Something like that novel that you've always wanted to write, or that app that you're trying to perfect. Something that's related to work that you can do when you're not doing anything else, just to fill the time so that you stick to your working hours. And don't try and work too hard. This is a problem lots of people have when they work from home. They drive themselves and they drive themselves and they drive themselves, and they end up getting completely burned out. You can be the hardest taskmaster or hardest task mistress that you've ever worked for, and this can be a real problem. So when you start to feel tired, like this lady here who looks like she's about to fall asleep into that pile of books, that's the time to stop. So keep your body healthy, listen to your body, and when you start to feel tired, that's the time to stop. And then you can adjust your working hours accordingly so that you stay fit and healthy and that you don't end up getting completely burned out. So you need to adjust your hours so that they suit your physical and mental health as well as your financial health. And remember to take a day off every once in a while. Just because you work from home doesn't mean that you're not entitled to a day off every so often, just like you would do when you worked for an employer. So you also need to schedule regular holidays and vacations. That's very important that you take time to recharge your batteries by taking some regular holidays and just getting away from home, getting away from your work. And something that I always do is try to keep public holidays. Don't work on public holidays unless you absolutely have to. I know that's difficult if you have clients that are overseas in other countries where their public holidays might be different from yours, and they might expect you to be working when everybody else is having the day off. And you might have to do that sometimes, but whenever possible, you should try and take public holidays off, because that gives you the opportunity to get together with other people, with friends and relatives who also have the day off. So there you go, just a few ways to stay motivated when you work from home. In this video, I'm going to talk you through how you go about designing the ideal home office. And there are several things that you should consider when designing your home office. First of all, it should be somewhere that you use for work and for no other purpose. So you want to have somewhere that's separate from other parts of your house. So it could mean having your home office in a spare bedroom, in a shed or outbuilding, or in a garage or basement. You should also make sure that there's plenty of natural light coming into your home office. So if you have your home office in a basement, you should make sure that there is a skylight or some other means of getting natural light into the basement, into your home office. And you should make sure that there is adequate artificial lighting as well, so your eyes aren't strained by looking at the computer screen in poor lighting. And you should also avoid fluorescent lights, neon lights, because they can be straining on your eyes. And you should have a separate phone line for your home office, a separate phone line with voicemail, so that it's separate from your home phone, so that you can keep your work calls and your private calls separate. Now you're going to be spending a lot of time here, so it should be a pleasant environment, paint the walls a nice color and make sure that there's nice carpet on the floor and so on, because you're going to be here for quite a lot of time. This is where you're going to spend your working day. And you want to keep functionality in mind when you're designing your home office. A vintage roll-top desk might look fantastic in the antique shop, but it's not going to accommodate your computer, your printer, your phone, and other paraphernalia, so it's probably not a good idea to get one of those. And an antique dining chair looks great, but it's not designed to be sat on all day. So again, you need to keep functionality in mind. So you want to have your desk at the right height, and you want to have a comfortable chair to sit on. One of those ergonomic chairs, for example, if you have trouble with your back, because again, you're going to be spending a lot of time sitting in that chair at your computer. And you want to have enough storage space as well, enough space to put things to keep them to hand. So we're talking about shelving for books and files and filing cabinets, places that you can store stuff and keep it handy. And you want to make sure that you have enough electrical sockets, enough electrical outlets. You don't want to have extension leads traipsing all over the place because they can be a hazard. And you want to pay attention to the heating and the air conditioning. This is something that a lot of people don't really think about until the last minute. But again, you're going to be there all day, so you want to make sure that it's a nice temperature, a nice environment to work in. So you need to pay attention to that, particularly if you're siting your home office somewhere like a shed or a basement that may not have heating or air conditioning laid on. Okay, let's take a look at some example home offices. I suppose this one is actually a bad example, but it's typical of the sort of setup a lot of people have when they first start working from home. For a start, you can see that it's a bedroom. There's a bed over there on the left-hand side of the picture. The desk is an old dining table by the looks of it, and it's all strewn with papers. Everything's in a muddle. You can't really see that chair because it's all covered in clothing, but it doesn't look like it's a particularly comfortable one. You've got extension leads and wires all over the place. It looks like there's an old microwave oven underneath the printer there. In fact, this could be a student dorm room, perhaps. You'll also notice that there's a window-mounted air conditioning unit sitting right there, right where the person's going to be sitting, so they're going to be sitting in a cold draft. And it's not very conducive to actually getting much work done. And whoever has this home office will probably struggle. Let's look at one that's slightly better. Now this one's slightly better. You can see that they've got the desk at the right height, and they've got the computer there, and there's plenty of natural light. It's a bit messy, but other than that, it's not too bad. You can see they've got a desk lamp as well for when it's dark. And whoever has this office, although they seem to be slightly disorganized, will probably do better than the people in the previous example. Let's look at one more. Now this is more like it. You can see that everything looks quite organized. Looks like they've only just moved in, so there's not a lot of files or other things being in the office, but it looks like it's a nicely laid out office. You've got the desk at the right height, you've got a proper chair to sit in, looks like there's a filing cabinet and file box. The printer, scanner, copier unit there is within easy reach. They've got a desk lamp for when it's dark. You can see they've got some natural light coming in. The room's fairly plain, but it doesn't look too bad. There's nothing too distracting. You can't tell whether this room is used for anything else, but I'd hazard a guess that it's probably a spare bedroom or something like that, because there's no evidence of other furniture or other uses. You can see that they've got an extension block at the back there at the bottom of the desk, but it's all neat and out of the way, and whoever has this home office will probably be quite productive. So there you go, something to think about when you're designing your own home office. Multitasking is one of those buzzwords that gets bandied about at the moment, and you've probably heard it, and you may have even tried to do it. And in this video, I'm going to talk you through the right and the wrong ways of multitasking. Now, first of all, what is multitasking? Well, according to dictionary.com, there are several definitions, but the one that we're interested in is the second one, which says of one person to perform two or more tasks simultaneously. And if you've ever tried to rub your stomach and pat your head at the same time, you'll know that doing two things that are different at the same time is not particularly easy. So let's talk through the right and the wrong ways of doing multitasking. In fact, let's start off with the wrong way, because this is the way a lot of people approach multitasking. So, first of all, you start on one task, and then you notice there's another task that needs doing. So you stop doing the first task and you start on the second one. Then you realize that the deadline for the first task is fast approaching, so you stop doing the second task and go back to the first. And you finish the first task in a rush and you complete the second one in a similar manner. Then you notice that there's something wrong with the first task, so you go back and correct it. The second task is now overdue, so you work late into the night to complete it. And once that's done, you're stressed and exhausted and you collapse into bed. But you wake with a start in the small hours of the morning with the sickening realization that you've omitted something crucial from one of the tasks, and of course you've already sent it off to the client by email, or you've uploaded it to your workspace so that they've already got it before you realized that something's wrong. So you have to phone or email the client in the morning to apologize, and you can usually kiss any repeat business goodbye. Okay, that's the wrong way to do it. Now let's take a look at the right way. Well, first of all, you want to evaluate each task and prioritize. So you need to decide what's most important and what can wait. Then you want to work out what you can do yourself and what can be outsourced, because that's a good way of multitasking, is to do one job yourself and give another job to somebody else. And you want to list your tasks in the order of priority. Again, that's what you do after you've evaluated each task. Now, can you complete one task while another one is being processed? For example, let's take these videos. I'm recording them all today. Tomorrow, I'm going to edit them all. And what I'll do is I'll render half of them. I'll do the first 5 videos and I'll render them. And then once that's finished rendering, once they've finished batch rendering, I'll copy them onto a memory stick and I'll watch them back on my laptop. Now, while I'm doing that, I'll set my editing software up to batch render the second batch of videos. So the next 5 videos will render while I'm checking through the first. Now, it takes longer to render than it does to watch, so I'll fill the time by doing something else, like phone calls or sending emails from my laptop. 2 things at the same time. That's what I mean by can you complete one task while another one is being processed. Then you want to work out how much time you'll need for each task and add half again as much to it. I suppose it's human nature, and I'm as guilty of it as the next man, but you tend to underestimate the amount of time you're going to need for each task, especially if you're doing it for the first time. So when you're working out your task list, you want to work out how much time you think you'll need and then add half again, and then you'll know you've got enough time to perform each task. And you want to choose compatible tasks, things that are similar that you can work on one after the other. And then alternate tasks, breaking off from one to begin the other at a convenient place in the process. And you want to work on one thing at a time. Even though you're multitasking, you want to give your attention to one thing at a time. And you want to drop any unnecessary tasks. And also, don't rush if you get behind. Work at a sustainable pace. And if you get behind, don't try and make the time up by working more quickly, because then you'll make mistakes and then you'll have to go back and do it again, and that just pushes you further and further behind. So if you get behind, then look at some other way of making up the time by dropping any unnecessary tasks, for example. And finally, try not to overwhelm yourself, because, if you try and do too much at the same time, the brain just simply can't take it. It gets overloaded and you'll get confused, and then things will go seriously astray. Of course, one thing about multitasking is you must keep yourself very organized. And in the next video, I'll share my top 10 tips for doing just that. Some brands become so famous that they're remembered long after the company has gone. And I'm going to talk you through three of perhaps the best examples of this in this video. Now the first one is probably a product that nobody watching this video has ever bought, and that is Oakey's Wellington knife polish. And Oakey's Wellington knife polish was very popular, 100 years ago, when most domestic knives were made out of carbon steel rather than stainless steel and needed to be polished. And Oakey's was one of the top selling brands. And the reason that it's still remembered is because Oakey's had quite an extensive advertising campaign. They would have their name and their logo, which is again a very simple handwritten logo, all over the place. You would see it on buses, you would see it on train stations, you would see it in newspapers, you would see it everywhere. And if you look at photographs, particularly old photographs of London, where you see a horse-drawn bus or an old bus or a tram, chances are that there's going to be an advertisement for Oakey's knife polish on it somewhere. So much so that if we look in this photograph here, you can see here's a restored horse-drawn bus. This photograph was taken at a rally in London in 2014. But to add authenticity to the bus, you can see that the current owners have painted an advertisement for Oakey's knife polish on the side. I'm sure this bus probably carried all sorts of different advertisements during its working life, but in order to make it authentic, in order to make it appear correct in people's minds, the current owners have painted an advertisement for Oakey's knife polish onto the side. And so it's remembered, even though probably nobody looking at that bus has ever even seen a tin of Oakey's knife polish. Another one is Compaq Computers. Compaq was one of the first big computer companies who made PCs for both home and office use, and I'm sure many people watching this video will have had a Compaq computer as their first computer, or maybe have had a Compaq computer at their first job. And you can see an example of one of their later models here, and here's a very early laptop made by Compaq. The company was started in 1982, but they went out of business many years ago. They were taken over by another company that retired the brand. But there's still a lot of nostalgia for this particular brand of computer. And another brand that's gone but not forgotten is Studebaker. Studebaker was a manufacturer of motor vehicles based in South Bend, Indiana in the United States, but they also exported Studebaker cars all over the world. They had right-hand drive versions that were exported to countries like the UK and Australia, and there were all sorts of different Studebaker cars, Studebaker trucks, Studebaker buses, and so on. And you look here, there's a couple of examples from the 1940s and 1950s, and they were a worldwide brand. These photographs, this one and this one, were both taken at a car show in Sweden, and you'll still see them at car shows, and if you're very lucky on a nice summer's afternoon, you might perhaps see one being driven by its very proud owner. And of course, if you talk to people of a certain age, they will no doubt reflect fondly on having or driving or seeing a Studebaker car, even though the company actually went out of business in the 1960s. So there you go. Here are just three examples of brands that people continue to remember long after the company that made them has gone under. Okay, in the next video I'll talk you through how you can go about protecting your brand and to making sure that nobody else can use it. One thing that you may have come up against, and if you haven't come up against it already, you probably will at some point in the future, are people trying to denigrate what you do and saying that you don't have a real job. And they're going to say things like, you don't have a real job, or all you do is sit and stare at your computer all day. And you'll get some wag who'll say, "Oh, how many tunes can that one-man band of yours play? Ha ha ha." And others will simply dismiss you as a jack of all trades and master of none. And at some point, when you're just starting up, or when you have cash flow difficulties, or when times get tough, you're gonna have a conversation with somebody, be it your spouse or your parents if you're young, or the bank manager or creditors, and they're going to start a sentence with the phrase, "if you had a job." And, you're putting your heart and soul into your business and it's not being appreciated. And it can be very, very discouraging. Well, first of all, take comfort from the fact that you're not the first startup, micro business or entrepreneur to hear this. People are conditioned from a very early age that you must have a job for an employer. That's the sort of way that Western society works. Everybody has a job for an employer. And this comes with the so-called security of regular hours, regular pay, and a future. And if you're watching this video, I'm sure you've figured out already that this is an illusion. And of course, another reason why people are very hostile to people who start up their own businesses and unsympathetic when times get hard is they actually want your business to fail. And I know that sounds rather harsh, but it's true. Some people, even people your nearest and dearest, will want your business to fail. And that's because they're scared to take the plunge themselves. They don't want to take, well, they do want to take the plunge, but they're afraid to. So they want you to try it, and then they want you to fail. And because if your venture fails, well, that makes them feel relieved. Oh gosh, thank goodness I didn't do that. There but for fortune go I. So that's why they would want your business to fail, because it makes them feel good. And of course, if your venture succeeds, then they feel bad because they didn't have the courage to start a business themselves. So what do you say when people accuse you of not having a real job? Well, I say, yes, you're right. I don't have a job. I have a business. Which often brings the riposte, yeah, but it's not a real business, is it? It's just you working out of your spare bedroom. Well, there's an old saying, mighty oaks from little acorns grow. Let me give you a case in point. I'm sure you've heard of Dell Computers. Well, Dell Computers was started by Michael Dell in his dorm room at the University of Texas. And he started by assembling components to make computers, and he put them together in his spare time in his dorm room at the University of Texas. And if you're watching this outside the US, you may not be aware, but it's standard practice at American universities that students share rooms. So he only had half a room to work in. He didn't even have a spare room to work out of. But his business now has over 108,000 employees and a turnover of $56.94 billion as of 2013, which is the last year for which figures are available at the time that I'm making this video. But what if you're not looking to start a multinational conglomerate? Well, the thing is, of course, most small businesses stay small because that's how their owners like them. And many people have shunned the mainstream because it suits their lifestyle. Others have a talent that they've managed to turn into cash. Here's a case in point, J.K. Rowling, Joanne Rowling. Now, she was a single mother on benefits when she wrote the first Harry Potter novel, and she's gone on record as saying that she was as poor as it was possible to be without actually being homeless. And she used to write in cafes, and she used to write in coffee shops and all sorts of other places, anywhere where she could find the time to scribble something down when she wasn't looking after her daughter. And she's gone on to sell more than 450 million books worldwide. And in addition to that, she's made money from the movie franchise, and then there's all the merchandising and everything else, and now she's a very, very wealthy woman. But, of course, some people will say, that's not a real job. Well, so what? As long as you can feed and clothe your family and keep a roof over your head and live the sort of lifestyle that you want, does it matter? Personally, I would say no. Some people march to the beat of a different drummer. And it would be a dull old world if we were all the same. By watching these videos, I hope you've become inspired to create your own healthy business and to live your own healthy life. And I wish you every success.